Time's expired.
And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm tremendously proud to yield 2 minutes to my good friend and a great American patriot, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Steve King.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Georgia. I tend to agree with all the Republicans from Georgia. And I'm here on the floor to speak to this issue of what frames this rule and the continuing resolution that flows behind it, Mr. Speaker. And I'd remind the American people, I'm here to talk about Obamacare, about cutting off the funding to Obamacare and keeping our pledge. We have 87 new freshman Republicans here in the House of Representatives. I believe all of them ran on the repeal of Obamacare. I know all of them voted to repeal Obamacare. And I know this House has the authority to cut off the funding to Obamacare. We passed H.R. 2 to repeal. Every Senate Republican voted to repeal Obamacare. And H.R. 1 was the will of the House. We stood here and we debated over 90 hours, and the components of that affect the policy of this country within the rule of H.R. 1 are not part of the negotiations of this CR. Not the 2-week CR that passed that we're operating on now, and not the 3-week CR that's the subject of this rule that we're debating here, Mr. Speaker. And so I lament that we don't have the will of the House reflected in this CR, and it is trying the patience of at least the Republicans in this House. A growing number have said that they're not willing to vote for another temporary spending measure in order to bridge it over until we get some kind of resolution. But the House can draw the line. There's not a dime that can be spent by this federal government without the approval of the House. And my position that was reflected by the gentleman from Massachusetts is this: I'm willing to face the president, because if we're not willing to face the president, he will get exactly everything he's willing to fight for. That means we have to confront the idea of the president eventually shutting the government down or giving what he wants. And it's more important that we stand on the Constitution and fiscal responsibility than it is to hand over to the President of the United States, who has the audacity to send us a budget with a $1.65 trillion deficit, and that level of irresponsibility to just capitulate to his demands. We must shut off the funding to Obamacare, and I'm ready to do that, and I'll vote no on the bill, but not the rule. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself such time.